Thank you for joining us, everybody, on this week's episode of Now You Know Movie Show.
Movies!
And we're doing Moonlight this week.
Moonlight.
This is the Barry Jenkins movie.
Yes.
That won... give me the envelope, please. Did it win Best Picture of the Year?
I don't know.
Moonlight.
Stephen Harvey.
Moonlight, you won. You won Best Picture. Oh.
Yeah.
Made too many copies of Kinko's, I guess,
Okay.
of Emma Stone's winning nomination. Oops.
Oopsie.
Too many.
Or was it conspiracy?
Too many blown leads.
I think that they were off in La La Land, personally. Like, were they trying to read that thing in the moonlight or what?
Wow, it's
Emma's
right out the
face.
gate.
Emma's face was stone cold.
Oh, wow.
She found out that-
Patrick, pick the top
Hey,
winner.
it's not just him. It's not just him.
Oh, getting in on the
I could
action.
be funny too.
Yeah.
So in our last episode of Manchester by the Sea, we came up with this awesome idea of putting the average of our votes or reviews today right here. So
Right
you'd be
there.
seeing, before we give you what they individually were, this is our average. So this way you can decide if you want to go see the movie if you haven't already. First couple minutes, we'll just give you kind of a synopsis of the film so you can see if it interests you, and then we'll get into the spoilers.
Cool.
Spoiler.
Yeah, so this is a story that's told in three parts about a young man's life, Little, Chiron, and Black, and all the same person, but different actors.
Yes.
Which is an interesting way to tell the story.
Yeah, definitely.
All very different actors. It's not like, oh wow, they cast those actors to be identical or something. They tell him in a different stage of his life, and it follows his life. There's internal changes going on in his life, and there's external forces working on him, and we're seeing him kind of have to navigate that through his life,
Yes.
coming from the inner city down in, is it Miami?
Miami. Yep.
Miami.
He starts in
Faces.
Miami.
Ends up in Atlanta.
Yep.
Faces lots of adversities.
Yep. And he has a tough go of it, for sure.
It's been compared to a poem, and I think that's kind of one way to think of it. It's very poetic movie,
Yeah.
and it's beautiful. The shots are so saturated, many of them, almost to the point where you think they couldn't get away with it, but they do. It drew me in to many of the scenes.
This movie looks gorgeous.
Really cinematically well shot and done on a budget that I later found out afterwards was $1.5 million, which
Which is crazy.
That's unbelievable.
That's crazy.
really is crazy. Many of those shots I thought would cost that much just to do. I mean, if you think
Right.
about extras and scene locations and stuff. So to do the movie on a budget like that,
Yeah.
I've been thinking, I think that the Academy should almost start setting up different categories of movies. Like if you spend $300 million on a movie, you should be put in your own category. You know? I mean, and if you can make a movie for under $2 million, that should be in a different category. So,
Right.
yeah, I don't know if I agreed that it was movie of the year. That jaded me when I saw it after I found out it was movie of the year, and I kind of was thinking, okay, movie of the year. And you know how that happens sometimes
It's gotta
when
be amazing.
you
Yeah.
set that bar. If I hadn't had that, I think I would have thought it was even a better movie. But the whole movie, I'm kind of thinking like, you're the movie of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
you
was-
watch it, as more of a critic.
Right. You're like, why is this movie of the year?
Yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, if you look at our average there, that you can decide whether you want to go see it. And now I think, unless you guys have any other things that you can talk about that aren't spoilers.
Spoiler time.
Yeah. Spoilers.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome
It's
the
hard to talk about this
spoiler
movie
zone.
without spoiling anything. You talked about going into this movie knowing it's the movie of the year and being a little bit of a critic while watching the movie. I sort of felt that way while starting the movie. We had just watched Manchester by the Sea. I was, expecting to be bored by this movie. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Why?
I don't know. I just seemed. I saw the trailer. It just seemed like a drama. I'm not usually into drama movies, but I started watching the movie as a critic, and very quickly that went away because I got totally absorbed by the story.
Do you think it's because it starts with him being a kid, and you?
I think that
Yeah.
creates a lot of empathy for this character because, I
Yeah.
mean,
The
as a
nostalgia.
child, I mean, that's innocence right there. And, like, you just see this kid from Jump Street getting, like, chased after by a bunch of bullies. And he doesn't even understand why, like, they're going after him and stuff. And it's just heartbreaking to see that, like, from, like, right out of the gate, this kid is, like, isolated and alone and has nowhere to really turn to.
Yep. I felt that in this movie, the way that they sort of portray that first act with him being a kid, it almost felt like you were watching from the perspective of a child too, because things were sort of seen as really overlooked. They didn't really explain much. You kind of had to just figure it out as it went along. Like the father figure.
Right. Yeah. How are these figures gonna fit together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also like that they didn't go in any traditional, like, you think that Juan is going to become his dad or something. You know,
Yeah.
like, you're thinking, like, oh, that's where we're going with this. And that's
And then
not
he was
it.
just mysteriously dead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they keep subverting your expectations. Like, there's so many ways in which they shoot some of these scenes that kind of fill you with a little bit of dread. Like, you feel like something bad is about to happen in this scene.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's, like, even, like, in that first scene where you have Mahershala Ali's character, Juan, he's going to meet one of his like, drug dealer, like, employees, or I don't know what his corner boy or whatever.
The corner boy, yeah.
And the camera's just, like, kind of spinning around them, and it's, like, he's being circled, and it kind of creates this claustrophobic feeling. You're like, what is about to happen here? We're, like, a minute into this movie, and I'm already kind of feeling, like, this tension. Like, you've seen so many movies where, like, you would be depicting, like, this kind of neighborhood, and, like half the movie would just be people getting gunned down in the streets and all this stuff. And this movie doesn't do that, you know?
Yeah.
Any of, like, a lot of the tragedies that happen, like, he's, you know, as Zach mentioned, his character mysteriously dies. We don't really know how or why.
And I like that because that's real life. And,
Yeah.
And you also have the actor playing Juan, like, highly regarded, and you expect him to be in the movie the whole time.
Yeah.
And then
Totally
he's
expect
just
him to be.
gone.
He's
You
The
know,
trailer tricks you too. The trailer makes it seem like he's in the whole movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's because he's the big name actor.
Yeah.
right?
This is true.
Yeah.
I love him as an
But
actor.
I loved,
Yeah.
even though he's in solo this movie, I feel like his performance and his presence, even in just that small part, just casts such a huge shadow over the rest of the movie. And as soon as he's gone, you feel his absence, especially in Act 2 when, I mean, not to get too far ahead, but when Chiron is kind of like, he's really lost at this point because his one, you know, like, mentor and guide he's had in his life is gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
And
And
like,
I like
now,
to feel
who
it.
do you turn to? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I liked how Juan was honest with him. Remember at the dinner table or whatever, and
Yeah.
he was asking him, like, are you a drug dealer? And
Yeah.
he was totally open and honest. And
Yeah, he's asking him big questions about, you know, am I a faggot? And he's
Yeah.
like, no, you can't. Don't let them call you that.
Yeah.
You might be gay,
Yeah.
but don't let him call you anything. Like
Yeah.
he's just honest. He's kind of being like that father figure to him in a way.
Yeah, I mean, he's telling him to, you know, like, be yourself and, like, own who you are and don't let other people bring you down. And it's so heartbreaking that whatever happens to him, he's gone. He loses that message in his life, and then as, you know, you see the way his life progresses, he doesn't do that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the director said that he wanted to bring art house to the hood, and I thought that was interesting because we've seen lots of hood movies like you talked about where it's just drive-bys and rap music, and there was a lot of classical music, and that just kind of brought the different feeling to this.
Yeah.
You got to see the desolation of where they live, but you didn't feel the same way about where they lived.
Right.
You
It almost felt like the quiet behind the scenes of the
Right.
the regular old hood style movies, you know.
Yeah.
I love that scene on the beach when he's with his childhood friend Kev, and Kevin is talking about the breeze, which is another theme that goes throughout this movie, and he's talking about how the breeze it brings kind of a pause to everything in the hood. Like everyone can just take a breather and not have to play their part, you know,
Right.
for a
Yeah.
moment. And that happens throughout the movie. There's scenes where there's just a pause. Either the music comes down and it's quiet, like after the fight scene at the school.
Yep.
It gets just quiet.
Yeah.
And I just thought the cinematography, the storytelling was just incredible.
The use of sound was great too.
Yeah, I mean,
there were so many scenes
when
with
there's
sound
disjointed
cut.
sound, when you
Yeah.
see his mother. Let's talk about his mother, the actress Naomi Harris.
Unbelievable
She-
performance.
She's a British actress, which I didn't know. When I
Yes.
saw her interviewed
British?
later,
Yes.
and I was like,
Yep.
wow, like,
Great job.
yeah, I mean,
Killed it.
She totally killed it.
Yeah.
And to go through all the stages of motherhood there, like, I mean, and more than there should be.
Yeah.
She was incredible. There's scenes where she's high and she's talking to Chiron and she's not making any sense or whatever, and the audio is disjointed from her face. And I thought that
They'll
was a
show
great
her
way.
without. Yeah, when they show the shots of her face still,
Right, and
while the vocals
just
were
talking.
talking.
Yeah.
That was really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Great.
I love
sound
that.
design. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a tough spot because her, the kid's mother is addicted to drugs
Yeah.
with, through the drug dealer that he's like, has a connection with. So
Yeah.
that's just an awesome, bit of writing there.
This movie's just full of devastating scenes. Like, there were so many times in this movie where I was just, like, floored.
Yeah.
And that was one of them. One thing I'd like to talk about, you mentioned with, in part 2, with the fight there at the school.
Right. Where
How satisfying was it, and also heartbreaking that Chiron had to go in there and smash a chair over Terrell. I mean,
very satisfying as a viewer, as an outside viewer.
Yeah.
But you realize at that point,
you realize that's
It doesn't solve anything.
Yeah, you realize that's the moment where things are going to turn for him, and he's gonna. That's what the beginning of him forming this, protective shell to be this different person, so no one could hurt him again. But
He definitely hit the gym after that.
Yeah, he definitely.
You're just so disappointed in society in general when a kid can't get an education and can't get what he needs in life.
No guidance.
And he's a good kid, and you just, as an audience member, you're just sitting there feeling like, oh gosh, I wish I could be one of these people in the movie that's helping you. There are people who help him, which is the hope to me. I mean, it wasn't just all desolation. There's people who help, but
Like the drug dealer.
It just seemed like almost at that point instinctive, like he was just Chiron was sort of letting his instinct take over, and he just like, the only thing I know to do now is just beat this kid with a chair.
Right.
There's nothing else he knew he didn't know where to go, who to turn to,
Right.
and he just he snapped, and I think that. As satisfying as it was to watch that kid get smashed in the back by a chair.
And the worst part too is it was the friend too who was kind of forced into beating him up. The one who was basically
Kevin.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh.
Yep, that was the relationship between Kevin and Chiron was really interesting in all three sections.
It showed how our environment pressures us into being something that we may not be.
Yeah.
And in every chapter of the book, he's being pressured and pressured and pressured, and we can see it from the audience's point of view.
Yeah.
But he can't see it. In fact, his community knows more about him than he knows about himself. Usually, his community knows who he is before he knows who he is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it amazed me too. They were how everyone in the neighborhood just knew everyone's business. They all knew that Chiron's mom was on drugs, and as if it wasn't hard enough for this kid as it is. You can't. There's no escaping. Everyone knows what's going on with you and is using that against you.
And there's no excuses. I mean,
you'd
think that. So at first I thought, oh well, these kids don't even know what's going on with his life. His mom's a drug, and then they say it to him. They're like, your mom's a druggie, and I'm like, oh, okay, so they have no empathy. Yeah. And then there was that one scene where he was talking to the guidance counselor after getting beat up, and he was saying you don't even know to her, you don't even know.
Yeah,
he kept repeating it.
It's he can't even
where do you begin?
Yeah. Right. As much as he probably even wants to have someone like this woman who he can just say everything to, he can't.
Yeah.
Because of he just feels like he has to keep it all inside. Because if he lets it out, then the world will know that he knows, and then that would be just even more reason to go after him.
And it's almost through most of the movie, you've taken this breath and you can't exhale it. There's only a couple points in the movie where you can take that breath. One of them is in the final scene, the final chapter, where he finally meets back up with Kev again after all these years, and they're finally alone together, and you feel like you can take that breath again, and everything does go quiet.
Well,
and
all the Kevin scenes.
Yeah, that's true.
From the beginning,
his only friend. I loved how the cinematographer, and I guess it would be the director, cinematographer was James Laxton, puts the camera between the actors in many of the scenes. So it's not just a two shot. It's shot, which must be so hard as an actor to do. Imagine how hard that is to act to a camera.
So hard.
And yet he got so much out of those actors.
Definitely. And I think the three actors who play Chiron over the course of the movie all did a really amazing job.
Yeah.
I think in particular, I noticed between the child actor and the actor who plays adult Chiron, even had some of the same mannerisms and the way they talked, the way they kind of would slump their head and kind of.
The facial expressions, it's almost like this was a real person.
Yeah,
it
kind of felt
off of
Boyhood in those ways, except obviously with different actors rather than the same actor growing up.
It was unbelievable how all of them made you feel like it was the same person, even with that dramatic change in Chiron from Act 2 to Act 3, where he became ripped and he had the grill and he was a drug dealer.
And he basically says being Juan.
Yeah,
he's driving the same car.
Yet he's still the same kid from Act 1.
Right. Yeah, he
feel that.
He wanted to have that father figure. He grew up to be Juan, basically.
Yeah. It was really interesting.
This movie is all about the expectations of masculinity, and I feel like we couldn't even have this movie until now.
Yeah.
Because I was just watching Hidden Figures, which was that film about the NASA mathematicians, which took place in 1961, and I was just shocked. I was watching it with my kids, and I was just like, that's how awful we were in 1961.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew we were, but like
Yeah.
just see it, and I'm sure we're gonna watch this movie 40 years from now and be like, that's how awful we were to each other back, in
Right.
2017. Like we couldn't just let ourselves be ourselves. But yeah, where he grew up, he had an expectation of how he should be, and he couldn't be outside that mold and exist.
Growing up and being like confused about your sexuality, I feel like Enough is a really tough experience, and I think that showing that plus growing up with no mother, no father, financial struggles. His mom was stealing from him to buy drugs. Just so many different turmoils that he had to go through. And it's like a lot of it is just something that we can't even talk about because people don't feel comfortable talking about it. And it's amazing that this movie was able to bring up some ideas that are taboo still.
Yeah.
And it was just really refreshing to see something different like that. And not only was the movie different in that sense, but the whole idea that it almost felt like a play or a storybook, like where there's 3 acts.
Well, it is actually adapted from a play.
It is adapted from
the
a play?
structure of the play is different than the movie. I mean, this is an adapted screenplay. But yeah, it was based on a stage play.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So that maybe some of those elements carrying over there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. If I noticed it and I didn't know that fact. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
so
that
there you
shows-
go. Oh, I also really love the scene at the end with Chiron and his mother once she's in rehab and is kind of like trying to get it together. That scene of him.
That was a great scene.
I thought that was a really amazing scene. I love that they didn't. It'd be so easy to over dramatize that scene and have him storm out and be like, I'm out of here. I'm never going to see you again. And then like have that resolve later, like through like a dramatic phone call or something. But it even like with all the emotion that's in that scene, it still was so just kind of like natural and real. She just is like, please just sit down. And he does. And they sit there through the uncomfortableness and like work through it. And there's a moment there where you don't think he's going to forgive her. And then he does. And I just thought that was just amazing. And
Did you notice the parallel, too, between that scene and the one earlier where she was talking to Juan outside the car? Where I think it was Juan said something like, who's going to raise her? You? And he said that exact phrase. And then later on in the movie, when she was talking to Tyrone, he said like something very similar. He's like, who, Mom? You? And it was like the way they said it. It just you could so see the influence on him by Juan, and I thought that was so interesting. And it was a little bit nice to see the mom sort of, it was very late, but she's sort of starting to come around as a mother and be like I love you as much as you don't believe it. You don't have to love me. I love you. And I thought that was really touching. That scene was one of my favorite ones in the movie, I think.
Yeah, because it showed his internal character that he was a good person all throughout. No matter what life threw at him, he could forgive her. That was amazing. To be, we can't even fathom what that would be like to be able to forgive your mother for not being there for you ever.
I mean, it's all he ever wanted. It's a coming of age story, but in a sense that it shows the full coming of age. Because a lot of coming of age stories are like teenage years, adolescence, but this sort of shows the before, during, and resolve of the whole thing.
Think how daring that is as a writer or a director to say, we're going to have different actors, we're going to do whole different periods of time, like your sets
They all
have to go
shared
through different
equal screen
decades.
time, too,
right?
which is unbelievable.
Just to even think of doing that, and that's probably why Hollywood doesn't do these that often, because it takes so much daring to pull that off, and he pulled it off.
He did pull it off.
Yeah,
definitely.
it was really incredible.
Do you guys have any negative things at all? Because I've heard all just glowing, and you said earlier that it wasn't the movie of the year to you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you think of movie of the year, like I was thinking of like The Revenant or something where the scenes just blew me away. I was looking for that, and so I guess as an entirety, it was an awesome movie. It was, but I guess I felt that Hollywood should have been able to pull off a better movie of the year, and almost like shame on you, Hollywood, that this $1.5 million movie by an upstart director could do it. When I went back and rewatched it, I didn't find any of the things that I hadn't liked the first time. I guess the first time had been just all expectation, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I don't know if I can find too much of anything that I didn't like about this movie. I felt like it moved really well. I was engaged pretty much from the start.
Crying like a baby. For
multiple
most
times.
of it.
Yeah, it's just I can't really say anything bad about this. Do you have any things you would like to bring up?
Well, I just wanted more of a climax at the end. Like the ending to me was like,
Yeah,
I wanted more. Like it felt like it had a good flow. I was,
It leveled off.
Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 for me. Like that had the scene with the mother, right?
Yes.
Loved it, and then just the end was.
That's
just,
really the climax
just-
of the movie right
Right.
there. Is this the movie with the mother?
Yeah.
I was expecting something bigger. Like I don't know
The
more.
Kevin scene was very bland and
See, I don't know.
almost too realistic.
I really liked it because for me it was almost like finally maybe there's a chance this character will find some peace in his life.
Right.
That's all he ever really wanted. So for me, I feel like the ending was very fitting. You finally got that breath like for him. Like you mentioned, like you felt like you were holding your breath through this whole
Right.
movie, and I felt like that last like shot of them together, just kind of holding each other and just in this quiet moment was
I
like
agree.
but like the first time that we've seen like maybe in the whole movie where Chiron's actually just like being himself and just being
connecting with someone.
at ease for once. Yeah, connecting with someone for once in like how many years? Maybe
I know.
since him and Kevin had that fight that they were forced into at school. So
Right.
we're talking like decades or like 10 years, maybe more, where just being disconnected from the world. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, that worked perfectly, but I can understand, why you might want something maybe a little more exciting or a little more like satisfying maybe, because it's just like it's more just kind of like an exhale as opposed to like a
Right.
triumphant finish,
I didn't
that's
let out.
well
I let
said,
out a
yeah.
little bit of breath, but I was still kind of holding my breath. I wanted more.
You want
I
to
don't know.
exhale a little more. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm somewhere in between. I agree. I think that's what you said was very well put. I think that's sort of very true. But at the same time, it was also not this brilliant ending that like left me like wanting more. It was sort of just the end of that story, and I didn't really, need anything else.
I'm gonna give this one 4.5 out of focus blinking blue lights.
Okay.
I can't really find much fault anywhere in this movie. I would say, yeah, I feel like this movie kind of like starts and finishes, and I feel like the story just perfectly kind of wraps itself up. I kind of like Manchester by the Sea. I don't necessarily know how much I'd recommend this to someone unless they're like a real film buff, because it's a tough story. But I also think it's kind of an important story, especially for what we're going through right now, dealing with acceptance of people, and I feel like that's a big issue right now. We could all learn to have a little more acceptance and empathy for one another. So I would go 4.5. 4.5 out of focus blinking blue lights.
I like it. My rating would have to be 3.5 swinging chairs. I really loved the movie. I want to make sure that I am using this rating thing appropriately. I gave Arrival 4, and I liked Arrival more than this. So, I can't tie it. I'm going to make sure I give it a 3.5. Loved the messages in this movie. Enjoyed watching it a lot. It felt a bit slow at times for me. There were just some parts where it was a little bit dragging with a lot of B-roll shots that were just sort of lingering on. But I loved the characters. I loved the actors. So yeah, I'd say 3.5.
Yeah, I would give it 4.5 grills.
Nice.
I love that it won Movie of the Year because I think that gives it recognition that it needs for people to see it that wouldn't normally see it, and I think that the story should be told and talked about. I almost wish that this would be played in high schools, in health class or something. So many times they watch movies in health class, like old sports movies and stuff, and I feel like we should update that, and these would be great ones to get stories going and talking going among students about issues that affect them now. And so if you're watching and you're a teacher in a school, I know this may be inappropriate, but check it with your dean, but maybe you could watch Moonlight. It would be helpful for your students, I think.
I'm gonna give it 3.5 compassionate drug dealers. I don't know if that's a possible thing to do, but I liked it, and I didn't really love it. It was a little slow at the end, like I said earlier. I just wanted a better ending. I don't know. I was not like. I probably watched it as more of a critic because I knew that it was movie of the year, and maybe I would have had a higher rating if I didn't ever heard of the movie before. And my other rating I have here is from the Mysterious Wife.
Ooh, the Mysterious Wife.
And she rates it only a 2.5 hearts. She was just kind of bored by it, and she didn't like hate it. She didn't really love it. It was kind of like she knew that it was she thought it was a solid movie, and she wanted more of a climax.
Well, thanks so much for watching, everybody. And if you've got any comments or suggestions on what you thought Moonlight was for you, please let us know below. Also, any corrections? I'm sure we made some misstatements
Did
during
I say
this.
Mahershala Ali wrong? I'm
Ooh,
not sure. I'm
I
not
think you
sure.
said it right.
I feel good about it, but I'm sure someone's gonna shout me down and say no. I did it
We'll
wrong.
see.
We'll see.
You can
Well,
let
you
us
got
know.
one of the names right. One of the names pronounced right.
And please leave us suggestions for movies we should see next. We're also thinking of doing some TV shows. So if
Yeah.
you know of any good TV shows, let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Now you know.